Good morning. Welcome to our program, Redevelopment After Destruction for Tenants and Homeowners. This is a community forum for Florida residents who have faced and might yet face hurricane disasters. As reflected, this is designed to educate two categories of Florida residents: homeowners, and this morning we will spend some time from 9 o'clock until 10:25 educating homeowners, followed by tenants, for whom we will speak from 10:30 until 12 p.m. The purpose of this program is to educate, not to provide you with horrific statistics or information about meteorological predictions about the storm. The purpose of this is to provide you with basic information about your rights. We have today a wonderful selection of lawyers who will spend time talking about the following topics. Ultimately, we will be very, shall we say, enhanced through this information. So yes, we all know that in Florida, between June 1st and November 30th, the hurricanes just take over our lives, perhaps in some instances starting in mid-May. But today again, let's let the lawyers educate us. So we will begin ultimately by hearing from a young lawyer who is a staff attorney, Miss Yveline Dalmacy, in the Eviction Defense Unit. And as an eviction defense lawyer, she is responsible for helping people obviously avoid eviction. Ms. Dalmacy works with the Nassau Suffolk Law Services Group and is a member of the District of Columbia Bar. Attorney Dalmacy received her Bachelor of Arts from Hunter College and a master's degree in diplomacy from Seton Hall. Always interested in helping the public, we now want to hear from her so that we can understand her unique perspective on this topic. Good morning, Attorney Dalmacy.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. As I wanted to be here because I'm a Superstorm Sandy survivor and a former FEMA contractor. So I wanted to be here to share my story with you. My story is one of overcoming, resiliency, and hope, in that order. On October 29, 2012, the day that Superstorm Sandy made landfall in New York, I was unprepared. I did not even know that a storm was coming. And I had a young child, a 10-month-old, and an older child. That was her birthday that day. An evacuation order had been in effect. I didn't know. So that means I was not prepared for anything that day. When I got a phone call to say family members wanted to know if I had evacuated, I'm like, evacuating for what? They're like, there's an evacuation order in effect. What? So now I'm panicking because I don't know at any moment the storm could hit. I wasn't prepared, no food. I had a 10-month-old, but we cook home cooked meals, so no milk, nothing. But the only thing in my mind was, we have to get out. What if the storm comes? So the moment I find out, I made a reservation to go to a hotel. So I had a 10-month-old and a teenager with me. So the only hotel we could find was in a different state, in Jersey. So we traveled to that state to get away from the storm. And the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because sometimes there is an evacuation order. People don't listen. We listened. We evacuated. With barely any clothes, any food with us. We had to get out. Come to find out, a neighbor 2 doors down from us was one of the 44 victims of Superstorm Sandy. She died. So thank God we were able to find a place Well, in Jersey, we hunkered down, did not have enough food, did not have enough diapers. I had a 10-month-old at the time. We used bed sheets, we used towels, and we made do with whatever milk or water we could find from the hotel. That's how we survived. I remember at the time I was doing my master's in diplomacy, and I had a paper due, I think, a couple of days. So I emailed all my professors. That's my resiliency part. Email my professors to say, I'm displaced. I'm a victim. I'm homeless now. I need a few days to get my papers to you. They're like, no, you can take the semester off if you wanted to. But my goal was I got to get it through. So I stayed in school. 7 months later, was able to graduate. And my school did not even know I was going to graduate at that time because they thought I had taken the semester off. But despite the storm, despite everything, you always keep your eyes on your goal. You remain resilient. So my story of resiliency, weathering the storm, being homeless, I was still able to get it done. So now I want to be short because I know there's a lot of information that this forum will share with you. I wanted to leave you with a story of hope. When my home was destroyed, FEMA, as you all know, there's contractors or FEMA employees that come to your home to survey the damage. My house had gotten over 5 feet of water, so the entire first floor was destroyed. Nothing could be salvaged. So when the FEMA contractor came to our home, I don't remember, how many weeks later when they came to survey the damage, the person was nice. And him being there offered me hope, thinking that one day I will be able to rebuild because I can get some help. He explained what the process was to me. And I remember how empathetic he was to my situation, very patient, kind. And I had made up my mind that day, I'm going to be one of those contractors. I'm going to help others to bring them hope. The same hope that this man brought me, I'm going to bring somebody hope as well. So I made up my mind to become a FEMA contractor. And I was lucky to be able to deploy to New Orleans, I think around 2016, to help the victims there. As a survivor of Superstorm Sandy, as a FEMA contractor, so when I go into somebody's home, my job really is not to empathize. My job is to survey the damage, get the work done. But when I walk in there, knowing what I went through, knowing what these people are going through, I bring them hope. I let them know that, yes, I was once like you with my home destroyed, not knowing what to do, but you can rebuild. You will rebuild bigger and better. So many times people fall in my arms, they cry. And I said to myself, that's the reason why I do this job. Because when I walk into somebody's home, oftentimes that's when they let it all out. The crying, you would think there was somebody may have died in their family. So I had said to myself that I gave myself that mission. I would be one of those people that bring hope to folks that are similarly situated. So I remember a few days after I graduated from law school, I got a call. I was in law school in Florida. I got a call, devastation, floodings in New York. Are you willing to deploy? And I said, God, you must be testing me. Few days from law school graduation, and I said to myself, yes. The answer is yes, because I know I had made a promise. I would be one of those people that bring hope, where there may be no hope. So one of my deployments to New York, and I said, God, that's why you sent me. I'm going to leave you with this story. I met an elderly person, must have been at least 84. His wife was terminally ill with cancer, his home destroyed. He was at his wit's end. He's like, I want to end my life. I can't do this. So here I am, a survivor of a superstorm who was similarly situated in a way, but nobody facing terminal illness. So I was there to offer him hope, to at least talk to him, to let him know that, he's today, tomorrow is going to be better. You will rebuild. You will be fine. Your tomorrow will be better than yesterday, than your yesterdays. So I hope, it is my sincere hope, having shared my story with him, that I could at least provide a little bit of hope, knowing that whatever your tomorrow, whatever your today looks like, in the midst of this devastation, of this damage, when everything seems lost, when there's no hope, know that tomorrow will be better. It will be brighter. So I'm going to end on that note with this hope, with this story of hope for a better tomorrow. And now we will continue with the program by going to the next speaker. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Attorney Dalmacy. We appreciate you setting the stage for this program. We want to talk about how to be resilient, and as lawyers, we want to share information. Thank you so much. Now we want to move on to continue our discussion. As reflected in the flyer that you received, again, we're going to divide this discussion into 2 sessions. So if you're a tenant and on this session, you might want to wait until we begin the next section for tenants, which will start at 10:30. We would also like to remind you that this is just a snapshot of the information that you need. However, we've asked our speakers to provide us with some of the most important information that you need, because we realize that we only have so much time. So moving forward, let's begin with our first topic, which is ultimately designed to give you the first context, looking at hurricane advanced planning. And this was embedded within what Attorney Dalmacy said. And for homeowners, we want to begin by talking about how you can protect your investment now, before the storm. And to that end, we have Attorney Jason Fletcher. He is the managing partner of Fletcher Legal Group and is an experienced litigation attorney licensed in the state of Florida, and is absolutely dedicated to doing the best job for his clients. He is also a graduate of from the University of Florida and has an MBA from Stetson and received his Juris Doctor degree from Stetson as well. Now, the interesting and very important thing to know about Mr. Fletcher is that he is a former Associate General Counsel for one of Florida's largest property and casualty insurance companies. So he's going to be able to provide us with some insider information, having worked as a lawyer for the insurance company. Mr. Fletcher, Attorney Fletcher, good morning. We welcome you. Thank you so much for your participation.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm very much happy to be here, and thank you so much, Attorney Dalmacy, for your story and your story of hope and resilience. Absolutely amazing. So I wanted to talk to you all about homeowners insurance and just to give you some information about that, because I think it's important to understand, what's covered, what's not covered. It's important to understand what kind of protections and rights that you have in Florida when it comes to your homeowners insurance. And I think it's extremely, extremely important, especially in light of the storms that have actually occurred in Florida. The fact that people are now trying to figure out their coverage, the fact that folks are sometimes even struggling with their carrier now in terms of trying to get payments. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about homeowners insurance and also what it really is. Okay. So I wanted to start off by just talking about what homeowners insurance is and what it isn't. So homeowners insurance really is designed to cover sudden and accidental losses that happen to your property. And it's different from home warranties. So home warranties are things that you can actually buy to cover appliances, maybe your plumbing, maybe your electrical in terms of your maintenance. But homeowners insurance is really designed to cover things that occur as a happenstance, right? So unlike warranties, your homeowners insurance is not going to cover your appliances, but it may very well cover damage that is as a result of an appliance failing. So I'll give you an example. So say, for example, if you have a washing machine that overflows, The water that may overflow may damage your drywall, might damage your floor, might damage your carpet. Those damages would ultimately be covered under your homeowner's insurance. However, the fixing of your actual appliance itself would not be covered under your homeowner's insurance. Also, under homeowners, there are many policies where you have coverages for injuries that occur on your property or injuries that may even occur outside of your property, based on on what you could ultimately purchase. So the main areas of what we call perils, that basically means things that can happen to your property that homeowners insurance would typically cover, are these. So anything that deals with fire and lightning, windstorm and hail, right? So that would be very, very applicable when it comes to the hurricanes that came through. Those would be considered to be windstorms. Any explosions that may happen in the area or on your property would be covered under your homeowner's policy. Also, when it comes to any kind of riot or civil commotion, if there was some kind of civil commotion that caused damage to your property, that would be covered. An impact from an aircraft may be kind of rare, but that would be covered under your homeowner's policy. Impact from vehicles. If somebody ran into your home, the front portion of your home or the back portion of your home, that would be covered under your policy. If there was a fire nearby and smoke had somehow damaged your property, that would be covered also under your homeowners. Any vandalism, any kind of criminal mischief that would impact your property would be covered. Any theft, so if somebody were to break into your home and steal maybe content or steal items or even fixtures, i.e., your ceiling fans or anything like that, that would be covered under your homeowner's insurance as well. Accidental overflow of water and discharge, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But this basically means if you have a pipe break, if you have, any, your hot water heater overflowing or breaking or leaking, those types of losses would really be covered under your homeowner's insurance too, as well, the damage that will come from that. And any electrical damage or surge. So if you have a surge that comes into your home that causes a fire or damages appliances, that would also be covered under your homeowner's, typically in what we call an all risk policy. That's a policy that covers most of these perils.
Now, these are standard, so the insurance companies have these routinely, but ultimately hurricane damage coverage is also something that you might have to specifically request, or is that automatic in Florida?
Well, in most of what we call all risk policies, which basically is kind of your standard homeowner's policy, it would cover for windstorm. And windstorm is basically considered to be hurricane. So that would be under that. Typically, you do not have to buy additional coverage for that. You might have to increase your coverage limits based on the value of your property. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too as well. So when is homeowners insurance required? So generally in the state of Florida, it does not require you to have homeowners insurance coverage. And what Florida would be, if you don't have homeowners insurance, you would basically be considered to be self-insured, which basically means that you yourself will be forced to pay for any repairs that need to come to your property based on any damage. But if you have a mortgage, your mortgage lender may very well, and I think this is probably 100% across the board, would require you to have homeowners insurance because they want to protect their interest in the property. They don't want there to be a situation to where a loss happens, you can't rebuild, and they're not going to be receiving those mortgage payments from you, and that value is gone. So they're definitely going to require you to have homeowners insurance. If you do not purchase homeowners insurance on the private market, meaning you do it yourself, then what your lender may do is they may put on what they call force placed insurance. And basically what force placed insurance is, it's a policy that your lender will buy and put on your property. They become the policyholder and not you. And I think this is extremely important because when they become the policyholder, what ends up happening is if there's a claim on the property, they make it. If there are insurance proceeds that are paid, they receive those proceeds and they dictate how repairs occur. The tough thing about having force-placed insurance is that you really lose control of the overall process and you really put it in the hand of your lender. And that's one thing you definitely want to avoid, having your lender put you on forced placed insurance. Also, the policies under forced place can be very expensive, and you don't have the opportunity to be able to shop around in the marketplace and tell your lender, hey, listen, look at this policy as opposed to this policy because it's cheaper or not. Your lender's not going to listen to that. They're going to do what is they think is in their best interest, and it may not necessarily be in your best interest in terms of how much you pay in terms of your pocketbook. So let's talk a little bit about coverages, okay? Um, every homeowner's policy has different buckets of coverage. We call them different categories of coverage. So it could be coverage A, B, C, D. That's usually how it's delineated within your policy. And as it pertains to the hurricanes that came through, there are all also deductibles. And what a deductible basically is it's a certain dollar figure that you yourself have to contribute before the insurance company will pay their amount. So I'll give you an example. If you have a $2,000 deductible in your policy, what that basically means is that if you have a repair estimate for $10,000, you would be required to come up with the first $2,000, and then your insurance company will come in and pay the $8,000. So, in the situation of a storm, those deductibles are typically percentages of your coverage. So, say you have a coverage A, which is your dwelling, which basically means your house and your fixtures, of $100,000, and you have a storm deductible of 5%. Well, then what that means is that $5,000 would have to come up from you first before your insurance company comes in and repairs any amount above that based on any estimates that you provide or any determinations of your damage. So I think that's really, really important to understand what your deductibles are. So coverage A is typically your dwelling. That's your house itself and any fixtures within your home, the actual structure. Um, Coverage B is structures outside of your house. So there will be fences, there will be pagodas, which basically are fancy like gazebos and standalone structures outside of your home, your screen enclosures, things like that. Your coverage C will be your contents, things like jewelry, things like furniture, clothing. Those things will be considered under your coverages for contents. And you also within your policy and in most standard policies, they do allow for what they call alternative living expenses. And that's basically loss of use. So in the event that you have mold within your home and you can't stay in your home because of health reasons, then your policy would kick in to help you to pay temporary rent, maybe stay in a hotel, things of that nature. So it's important to understand if you have those coverages within your policy and what those coverage amounts are for. The other big thing that came to mind when it came to these storms that had come through in Florida is flood coverage and the importance of it. And I think it's important to ask the question, do you have flood coverage within your policy? Many policies don't cover flood. You would have to ultimately purchase something above and beyond your typical homeowner's policy. The rule of thumb in the past was that, if you lived, close to the beach or close to a stream of water, within a certain mileage, then you should get flood insurance. My mindset is to always get it no matter what. I think we've seen with these storms that came through that water can accumulate in areas that would typically, be considered to be immune, especially with climate change and all kinds of things going on now, where it's really becoming a real threat, in terms of flood. So flood coverage is extremely important. And I think it's also important to understand too that your homeowner's insurance is your first line of defense. Many times, state and federal programs, they may very well take longer than your private carrier. And many of those programs also are really designed to be supplemental above and beyond what your homeowner's insurance actually covers. So, and I know we're going to have another panelist who's really going to be talking about FEMA programs and really what to do if you're underinsured in the state of Florida or in any of these states where you ultimately have these kinds of disasters. So, what are some things to be aware of and review regarding your policy? Um, every year, I always suggest this when it comes to your policy, is to review your coverage amounts. This is extremely important, especially in hot real estate markets like Florida, where we have home values that are going up. very considerable. So if you have $100,000 coverage in your coverage A and your home value is for $350,000, well, that's definitely something that you need to review your coverage amounts, because the last thing you want is for there to be damage in your property and for you to be capped when, we know what inflation is doing. We know what the property values are doing in terms of going up. You may very well not have enough when you get that money from your home insurance in terms of repair. So it's extremely important to review your coverages yearly. Also, understanding that you may very well have wear and tear provisions within your policy, and this can really apply to roofs when it comes to storms. So many times these insurance companies are going to say, well, what condition was your roof in at the time of the storm? Was it a 15-year roof, 20-year roof? Was it a roof that was at the end of what they call useful life? And here in the state of Florida, we've had some changes in the legislature, which looks at the age of your roofs, and anything older than 15 years or even 20 years is really going to be under scrutiny in terms of whether or not it was really at the end of its useful life. So, and there's been a lot of case law also that talks about, cooperating with your insurance company. I always tell people, do not ignore your insurance company when you make a claim. If they make requests of you for documents, for pictures, for estimates, please, please, please respond to them, because that's a big, big area of not allowing coverage is if you do not cooperate with your insurance company. And there's a lot of case law that talks about the fact that the home insurance companies can say that they are prejudiced because they're not able to see the damage in the property. You've delayed in some kind of way. You didn't allow them to have an inspection. So the one thing you want to do is to continue to cooperate with your insurance company. And as I discussed before,
If I can, Attorney Fletcher,
yes.
it seems to me that for all of these very expensive portions of our home, isn't it also wise to keep those receipts? Because of course, how are you to determine how long you've had the roof other than having that receipt? So buried within this discussion as well is the need to make sure that we hold on to that information and protect it. Very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, in your preparation for storms, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this too as well, all of your important documentation, the receipts that you have for items that you purchase, whether or not be contents, whether or not be your roof, even if it's new additions to your structure. Say, for example, you got a new fence that you put up prior to a storm. Having all that information in a safe place, typically even a watertight place, is extremely important. Definitely, definitely, fantastic
Very
point.
good.
Um,
Very good.
Yes, and also a couple little things I also want to advise everybody about too as well is within your policy there may very well be limits within limits. So people don't typically understand this, but you may have a mold limit within your coverages. So for example, you may have a $10,000 mold limit to cover any kind of tear out for any mold, water damage, and things of that nature. That's not coverage above and beyond what you have, but it's a limit within. So for example, if you have $10,000 for mold coverage, it doesn't, and you have $100,000 for your coverage A, that doesn't mean you have $110,000. It means you have $100,000, and as a subset of that, you have a little bit for your mold when it comes to your 10,000. So I think it's important to understand those types of limits. Also, two last points. Your many homeowners insurance companies have what they call managed repair programs. Basically, that means that they have the right to come in with their own contractors in terms of actually doing the repairs for your property. It's a way for them to augment their costs. Take a look at your policy, see whether or not you have that. Also, some policies may be named peril policies, which means they only cover a certain bucket of different kinds of perils. So I know we went over a lot of different perils in the beginning, but say, for example, you have a named peril policy, it may cover only 10 different ones of those or 5 different ones of those. So take a look at your policies and definitely make sure you have adequate coverage on that. So being an insider with an insurance company, you get a chance to see a lot of different types of defenses that some of these insurance companies typically like to employ, right? And some of the biggest ones I outlined in this particular slide. And these are basically them, right? So they talk about the fact that, hey, listen, the homeowner has delayed in their reporting to us, right? But the interesting thing about that is that in many of the policies, they don't outline exactly how long a delay is in terms of the days, right? So it's important that if you do get these types of denials, that you reach out to a professional in order to help you to push the case. Because the one thing you don't want to do is just take the first no and say, oh, well, they're saying I delayed, so therefore I must have delayed. Well, that may not necessarily be the case. It's important that whenever you have damage to your property, that you report it as soon as you ultimately see it so that you get the home insurance company an opportunity to be able to inspect and take a look. Another one that's actually been pretty frequent has been pre-existing damage. And I think we talked about this a little bit when it came to the wear and tear on roofs and things of that nature. But what they'll say is that there was pre-existing damage in the property so that now that the storm had come around, we shouldn't be on the hook to have to pay for that because you had some damage from before. Well, the thing is this. Many carriers actually do what they call a 4-point inspection on your property when they give you homeowners insurance. So they're able to take a look at your property prior to a storm to see all the damages and also take a look at photographs of your property prior to the storm. So, for them to come back and now say, hey, listen, there's been some pre-existing damage, in many ways, it's important to actually push the case when it comes to those two as well. Um, Also, failure to disclose and material misrepresentation. This is another one that many carriers tend to employ. And basically, they use this really as a catch-all. They may even use this if they disagree with your estimate. So if you submit an estimate that's for $100,000 worth of damage and they say, no, it's only for, $10,000, they may say that that in and of itself is a material misrepresentation. So I think it's important that when you get some of these denials, it's important to get a professional to help you out with this, right? So also no wind created opening. This has been another one too as well, where you had no damage prior to the storm. You have damage after the storm. And they're saying, well, we looked at your roof and we don't see that there's a wind created opening. Well, in many ways, the tiles or the shingles on your roof could have been lifted by the wind and they could have come down. At first glance, it may not look like there was a wind opening. However, with further investigation, you might be able to very well see that. And I always say, do not take that first no as the final answer. And I put here too as well, some different professionals that you could also reach out to in terms of helping out. Property damage attorney like myself, a loss assessor, public adjusters are of tremendous help. Remediation companies, all these folks are in the marketplace in order to help you to assess whether or not you actually have damage to your property and if that damage will ultimately caused by the hurricane and the storm. So we've had some changes in the marketplace, right?
Actually, hold on one second, Mr.
Absolutely.
Fletcher. I want to take a quick little break here because I'm so excited. We are getting questions from our audience.
Sure,
And I
sure.
want to emphasize that because we have so much information, we've waited until we're going to wait until the end of the presentations before we enable you to ask questions. So please put those questions in the chat. We will
Yes.
gather them and get to as many as we can. But as you can see, there's so much information. I'm going to try and anticipate, but at the end of the day, my job is to move things along. But I would like for you, before we leave this page, to talk a little bit about the public adjuster. I'm not
Yes.
sure that people know about that very important person who can, in some respects, be quite the advocate.
Absolutely. Public adjusters are professionals who um, they wear a lot of hats. One of their biggest roles is to help to put together the claim for you for the insurance company. Um, what the public adjuster would do is they would come into your property, they would take a look at your damage, they may very well assess it, they'll provide an estimate, they will correspond with the insurance company, they will talk with them, provide them with documents, photographs, all those different types of things. And they really are professionals that help you to put together the claim in order for you to get the maximum amount of recovery from the insurance company. And many of these public adjusters, they're only paid whenever you actually get recovery from the insurance company. So they're basically paid a percentage of whatever you receive from the insurance company as a result of the work that they do. So I think that they're definitely key in the marketplace, and they've been a big help during this particular season where we've been dealing with a lot of hurricane damage, because they really have been able to put together a lot of these claims and put them in the best light for the insurance companies. Absolutely.
Excellent. And I was just almost certain that most people don't know about public adjusters. And it's very important to know you've got the lawyers, the adjusters, and we're all in our different lanes trying to make sure that we help you deal with the hurricanes. Thank you so much. Let's keep going.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the changes in the marketplace. Back in September, we had a fairly massive storm, and as a result of that massive storm, Hurricane Ian, the Florida legislature decided to put some different things in place in order to stabilize the market. And these are a couple of things that came out, and there was actually a Senate bill, and Senate Bill number 2A, that had come through. And there's some pretty substantial changes that are really going to impact homeowners. For a very long time, the attorney's fees that would have to be paid to an attorney to, say, for example, bring a dispute against your homeowner's insurance in the event that they didn't pay you or they underpaid you, would be automatically paid by the insurance companies. Well, because of this particular bill, they've changed that. Now the attorney's fees are paid out of pocket from the actual homeowners themselves. Now, I think what's also important too as well, and there has been a lot of discussion about this, but many of the legislators have basically stated that for the storms, so Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Nicole, for those particular storms, this attorney's fees provision would ultimately not change. So, for example, if you have a dispute with your insurance carrier and you have to hire an attorney and you have to go after them, there have been lots of representation from these individuals that these attorneys' fees would still be covered by the homeowner's insurance. So I think that's actually a good thing for homeowners because it's one of those things that you can tick off your list in terms of expenses that you'd have to deal with. Also, a lot of discretion was given to the insurance companies in order to change premiums. I always say that, when somebody's making profits, what is the odds that they're going to ultimately be diminishing their profits by lowering the amount that they charge you and your premiums, basically what you pay per year for your homeowner's insurance? It could be unlikely, but the legislature has given them some discretion more to do that. They've put within policies what they call arbitration requirements. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to basically push people into what they call alternative disputes instead of going to the courts. They're saying go to this particular process called arbitration, where we will basically be handling disputes more so than not. So they're putting more of these within the policies. So it's important to take a look at your policies, talk to your insurance agents in terms of the different changes that may be coming about in your policy as you renew. I think it's extremely important to look at that and understand that. Also, there's no more what they call assignment of benefits. That basically means if there are individuals who are going to come into your house to do remediation work, tear out work, any kind of rebuild work, those individuals cannot submit what they call assignment of benefits, standing in the place of you with your insurance carrier to get payments so that they can do work. That's something that's going to ultimately have to come out of pocket for the homeowner. So that's a big change. Also, they have changed the 90-day and 60-day adjustment periods. So before, the home insurance companies had 90 days to what they call adjust the claim. That basically means investigation and a determination of whether or not they're going to pay or not. Now they've shrunk that to 60 days. So I think it's a good thing for homeowners in the fact that you'll get a response from your homeowner's insurance sooner now under this new statute. Also, one of the next biggest changes also was with Citizens. So Citizens was the insurance company of last resort in Florida. Now what they're trying to do is they're trying to get more folks off of Citizens and into private insurance. So basically what they're going to look at is if you can find a policy that's within 20% of the premium that you would pay with Citizens, then you would basically have to go with the private option as opposed to Citizens, which basically is the insurance company of last resort here in Florida. So these are a couple of big changes. I wanted to kind of touch upon those because I think those are going to impact homeowners across the board when it comes to how things are going to change within the market.
I think we should follow up with that citizens information, but maybe we'll roll that over to the questions. We've got to move
Yes.
forward here.
Yes. And I also want Yeah, and I also wanted to include just some hot button topics in terms of some hurricane preparedness, some checklist stuff, and just some things that everybody should really be aware of, right? So, when it comes to being prepared for hurricanes that are coming through to the area, having that first portion should say water supplies, at least 1 gallon per person per day is usually a good metric to have in terms of water. First aid kits, flashlights, important to have those within your home prior to any kind of storm. 3 to 5 days of non-perishable foods, extremely important because you don't know how long power is going to be out, whether or not you can get to a store, etc. Critical medicine, making sure you have enough of your prescription medicine on hand. Pet food, kitty litter, any kind of pet supplies, anything that's going to be able to sustain your pets, extremely important to have that prior to any kind of storm. I always suggest this too. Turn the refrigerator to the lowest setting because if you do ultimately lose power, you are able to at least have something that's colder, and going to say colder longer in terms of keeping your food. Also, any baby supplies, Pampers, formulas, extremely important to have that stockpiled prior to any kind of hurricane coming through or adverse weather event. Just some key emergency items also. I wanted to touch upon this too as well. So having a generator, and I think the important thing too is this. We see this a lot after the storm, where people do not operate the generators in an appropriate way. They'll operate it, say, for example, within a garage. Not good. Operators, generators actually create carbon monoxide because of the fact that they run on gas. And many times that carbon monoxide can seep into the homes if it's running inside of a garage. Not good because that's going to basically lead to all kinds of respiratory issues and even at worst case death. So operating a generator outside of the home, they usually say with, at least, 10 to 15 feet outside of the home is extremely important. Having lighters, having matches in case you lose power, having cash available just so that you don't have to worry about running out to an ATM where power may very well be out and having it in safe storage. Batteries, and maybe even a portable battery charger pack, one of those jump packs that you use to jumpstart your car. Many of those have USBs and chargers on those too as well. Battery lanterns, also paper towels, and enough toilet paper stockpiles, extremely important. And just a couple things to be aware of too, and I think this is also going to help in terms of your insurance too. If you can really show the insurance companies that there are some things that you even did prior to the storm to prepare is extremely, extremely, extremely important. So, for example, take a look at your skylights, take a look at your chimneys, and your roof areas in terms of repair, making sure that those things are in tip-top shape. Conducting a roof inspection prior to any storm is always a good thing. You can really show the insurance company, hey, listen, look, my roof was in great condition prior and now it's in terrible condition. That is a strong, strong, strong case against an insurance company's denial. Also making sure that you trim overhanging branches and things like that when it comes to trees is extremely important too as well because that can limit the damage. Making sure you have caulked windows so you don't have water that's going to be coming into those windows, causing damage to drywall and things of that nature, extremely important. And also installing any kind of hurricane shutter or even impact windows prior to any storm, extremely important. And I know there are actually some programs within Florida that provide funding for that too as well, that I think is extremely important for homeowners to know about.
Excellent, excellent.
All
One
right, so
last list of action items.
yep, one last list of action item, guys. I just wanted to kind of just touch upon these things because I know that these are things that people talk about, but they don't always go into some details. So I wanted to go a little bit of detail about it, and I wanted everybody just to understand that know your evacuation routes when it comes to a storm. Please be aware of that. Also, make sure you remove any outdoor furniture, store them in an area within the home. Any important documents, and I think this goes back to the question that we had from before, receipts, any immediate repairs that you had prior to the storm, make sure you keep those things in a waterproof container. So you can bins you can buy from Home Depot, things of that nature. Keep those things in waterproof containers. Extremely, extremely important to be able to have access to those things in the event of a storm. Also take before and after photos of the interior and exterior of your property and also of your contents. That's going to be extremely important in terms of making a claim to the insurance companies. If you can show them the pictures of the items prior to the damage, I'm telling you right now, I've been able to really be successful when I've been able to do that. So fill all car gas tanks up because you don't know whether or not you can actually go to a gas station in time, and also prepare a running list of all the contents within your home. Just go ahead and jot those things down and make sure you have a running list of that.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Attorney Fletcher. We're
Thank you.
trying to prepare so that we can be more resilient, and I think that was just an outstanding presentation. We now want to turn to a new context and actually look at the steps to take during the hurricane. Of course, many people have challenges immediately once the storm hits. So now we want to turn to Attorney John Lawless, who is a staff attorney with the Bay Area Legal Services Organization. He specifically is in the disaster relief project section. So again, we have an expert who can give us an insider's view of all of the essential information that you need to know. Attorney Lawless received his bachelor's degree from the University of Florida, a master's degree in business administration from Stetson, and a law degree from Stetson as well. Before joining Bay Area Legal Services, he worked in the private sector with title companies as a general title counsel and as a practitioner in the fields of real estate, estate planning, probate, business, and nonprofit law. Welcome, Attorney Lawless, and thank you so much for your willingness to help us.
Good morning, everybody. Again, yeah, I'm John Lawless. I work at Bay Area Legal Services, which is a local nonprofit organization serving Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco counties, and we also do work statewide for seniors, veterans, and newly disaster survivors. So I'm here to talk about a little bit of the governmental relief that becomes available in the wake of a disaster, stuff that you can access immediately afterwards. I'm mostly going to focus on homeowners issues. To that end, I'm going to talk about FEMA relief. The Small Business Administration is actually highly involved in this as well. There are a lot of other resources as well that I'm not going to be able to touch on quite so much just because of the limited time that we have. There are SNAP programs available for disaster victims as well. Disaster SNAP is what it's called. So even if you don't normally qualify for food assistance in the wake of a storm, a lot of the times, as we said before, turn your refrigerator down as much as possible. Try to preserve that food. A lot of the times it's going to spoil anyway. Getting that stuff replaced can be difficult even for people who are otherwise in a good position. So the government does offer assistance with that, both through FEMA, local government, the Small Business Administration. There are also unemployment benefits that I'm not really going to be able to touch on in too much detail here. Obviously, regardless of whether or not you are normally employed, in the wake of a disaster, it can be really difficult to get to work. Your job might not be there for a little while either. So there is assistance available there. A good general resource for Central Florida is to just dial 211 on your phone. That's going to take you to the United Way. They have all kinds of resources. That's actually not even limited to disaster victims or disaster survivors. They help with all sorts of other issues, general unemployment, housing issues. So a good general resource to keep in mind before we get into this is just being able to dial 211 on your phone in Central Florida. It's a great thing to be able to do. With that said, however, I'm going to get into the meat of what I am going to speak about, and that is relief for homeowners, particularly with damage to their home in the wake of a disaster. The first thing you really need to do as a homeowner to be eligible for these programs is to make sure you actually own your home. It sounds like it's a pretty basic thing. This comes up more than you might expect. A simple way to do this is to go to the property appraiser's website. Just search for your property on your local property appraiser's website. Just go into Google, Hillsborough County Property Appraiser, Pinellas County Property Appraiser, Pasco County Property Appraiser, wherever you happen to be. Just look up your address. Make sure that you recognize the name that you see. This is not a guarantee of how the title looks on your home. Sometimes when it does say it's you, there can be issues too, but it's a good way to at least get a handle on whether or not you have an issue in this respect. A lot of the issues you'll see is if you go and search that and you see somebody else's name, somebody in your family that you recognize that may have recently or not so recently been deceased, and just EST after that. That means, according to the county, that property belongs to the estate of that person. You see these issues come up a lot with multi-generational homes. I think you'll see on my slide, and in mobile homes as well, because mobile homes can pass title differently than just a brick and mortar on the ground home, depending on how it's done. Mobile homes sit in kind of this dual state where they can both be homes, they can both be retired real property on the property, just like a house that was built with a foundation and everything, or they can essentially be a car. Now, if you bought a mobile home, went through a title company and everything, they probably should have checked as to whether or not that home had been retired. There's a little sticker on it that just says RP, that means real property. And that if a home looks like that, you have that on your property, it's been retired, it's part of the land that it's sitting on. If it hasn't, it has a separate title just like your car, and that needs to be transferred as well. The reason that this is important, we're talking about this in the context of disaster, is you're going to be offered assistance by FEMA, by HUD, again, by the Small Business Administration. For a lot of those programs, you need to show that you are actually the owner. FEMA is pretty generous with this. The SBA is also fairly generous with this. HUD can be pretty strict. Another problem that you'll end up seeing too when the federal agencies come in is they don't know Florida state law. They don't necessarily know how homestead works, that the passage of title doesn't actually require, for instance, a probate. A lot of the times it's done as a matter of course, just for record keeping, but you are the actual owner in a lot of circumstances after a loved one passes away, particularly if you were a spouse, a direct descendant, a child. The specifics of that, you're definitely going to want to contact an attorney to figure out, but it's something to keep in mind.
Let me just interject, because we're going to need 5 more sessions to get through this material. But let me just ask this: in some respects, these are the types of things, again, that homeowners should be doing right now. As in, as soon as this session is over, go and confirm so that you can avoid that problem. I'm going to start moving forward here a little faster because I'm a little concerned about time. And again, let me just remind the audience, I cannot thank these speakers enough. They've spent a lot of time on this material. This session will be recorded so that you can come back and look at things very carefully. So we're just giving you the tip of the iceberg here. There's so much more information, and we might have to do this again. But in the meantime, please move forward. Yes, go ahead.
Absolutely. So a good plan of action right away. Go ahead, get on your property appraiser's website, see if you own your house. You might be surprised. Moving on, the first thing that really comes to mind, and one of the most important things in the wake of a disaster, is FEMA individual assistance. There are 2 kinds. There's public assistance and there's individual assistance. You need to be declared for individual assistance in your county to receive these benefits. You'll see I have that list of the 3 basic things that need to happen. Federal disaster declared, your county needs to be declared, and the county needs to request individual assistance. What the point of this is for you practically is that it typically doesn't happen overnight. It'll take a couple of days before this happens. As soon as individual assistance is declared for your county, they give you housing assistance, other needs assistance. Housing assistance is generally for helping with repairs to your home, replacing homes, dealing with damage. Other needs has to do with what I was talking about, the food, water, lost clothes, everything like that. So both of those become available as long as your county requests it. So just keep an eye out for that. Some of the requirements for receiving that assistance, you need to be either a U.S. citizen, a non-citizen national, which means a permanent resident, a qualified alien. Those are generally asylum seekers, victims of domestic violence, things like that. A lot of the times, families can apply via a minor child who is a citizen, even if the parents aren't citizens. So you can still receive that relief in your household as long as one person qualifies. An important thing is they have just added a question with Hurricane Ian, or not a question, a notice that they may share any of the information provided in a FEMA application with Homeland Security. So be aware of that. Easy ways to apply, FEMA.gov. They also operate a phone number right there, 800-621-FEMA. The DRC, what that is a disaster recovery center. That's another important thing. It's great to have a website and a phone number, but in the wake of a disaster, you're probably not going to have access to the internet or a phone readily. DRCs are set up, recovery centers are set up by FEMA in conjunction with the local government. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you're familiar with something like an insurance village, but all of the resources gather at those disaster recovery centers. You can apply with FEMA, they will be there. Generally, your local legal aid will be there, a lot of county resources. You're going to be able to apply for that unemployment and those food benefits as well there. So it's a really good place to find out as soon as possible where they have set up your disaster recovery center or DRC, because you're going to be able to get a tremendous amount of help. So keep an eye out for those. You have to be ready with your social security number, description of your losses, any insurance information. That's important because of the discussion we just had. FEMA assistance really exists to supplement your existing insurance. If you are underinsured, FEMA is there to help cover the gap. If you have no insurance, FEMA is there to provide assistance. But the first step is always going to be insurance, making sure that everything is in place there. You're also going to be covered much better if you are insured. So it's not a great idea to count on FEMA if you have the option to be insured yourself. Also, you're going to want telephone contact information. FEMA is going to need to be able to get in contact with you with respect to your application. That sounds very simple, but again, in the wake of disaster, you're going to want to have a couple of contingency plans, friends, family that you may be able to in advance plan to have a contact network, because you cannot guarantee that you yourself are going to be able to use your own contact information. So rather than scrambling afterwards, plan for that now. Applications for FEMA assistance generally have to happen within 60 days of the disaster, or 120 with good cause shown. Don't worry too much about that. With respect to Ian, for instance, they extended those applications. That happened at the end of September. You were able to apply up to January 12th. FEMA is very reasonable with its deadlines, if nothing else. So just get it done as soon as possible, but get that information gathered as quickly as you can. You're going to need to certify that you are in a disaster declared county at the time of the disaster. That's important, meaning you didn't move in there afterwards. What your damage is, they will send inspectors afterwards. They have a ton of inspectors. A lot of the times you'll see with FEMA, they say, oh, not a lot of inspections are being done. That's a result of the applications failing, not a lack of inspectors. They are all over the place. Again, if you have insurance, it's going to have to be inadequate before FEMA will step in. They will often give money in advance because they can be a little faster than the insurance companies. But if your insurance later pays out, they will recoup those costs. So be aware of that. FEMA is also, a lot of the times when you apply for assistance, going to refer you to the Small Business Administration. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a second, but I just don't want you to be confused by that ahead of time. A lot of people see Small Business Administration and they weirdly think that has to do with small businesses. Weird, I know. But it in fact also has, in the wake of a disaster, a lot to do with individual assistance. So don't worry, if they refer you to the SBA, go ahead, go with the SBA, go through their process and make sure that the SBA directly communicates with FEMA afterwards. They pretty much know what to do, but sometimes you've got to stay on them a little bit. FEMA, again, we were talking about homeownership before. They really want to see that you are actually entitled to these benefits. They have an expanded list of stuff that they will actually be willing to accept at this point, though, rather than just the title. They'll accept basically bills, etc. Really, as long as you can prove that you have been living there for a while, they're willing to help out, but you need to have some of that information available. Ready for the next slide as well. All right, going to move on to SBA. Again, we were talking about this before. The Small Business Administration you often think of as small businesses, and SBA is there to help out with small businesses afterwards. However, the Small Business Administration also provides low-interest loans to people in the wake of disasters, survivors, etc. And FEMA likes to direct people to the SBA to see if they qualify for those first. You'll see this in almost every instance of applying for housing replacement or repair assistance from FEMA. They'll say, go to the SBA, apply for a low interest loan. These loans have very generous terms, but they do have to be repaid. The SBA's ability to lend does have to do with the applicant's ability to repay. A lot of the times in the wake of a disaster, particularly with lower income people, they're not going to be able to qualify for these loans. And that is okay. You just need to make the application. You show the denial to FEMA, and FEMA will go, okay, I understand you don't apply for this. We will move forward with our process. So just be prepared if you are going to be applying for FEMA assistance. You are probably going to, at some point, have to apply for a loan. It does not mean that you have to take out that loan. It just means that you have to apply. I have some of the terms there. They'll give them up to about $200,000, which is way over what FEMA assistance typically covers. So even in the instance that you have the choice between FEMA or the SBA, it can be a good idea to go ahead and go with these loans if you can qualify for them. 30 years, low interest rate, it's really not bad. Again, application information, they have their website, they have their phone number. That may or may not be available to you in the wake of a disaster. They will also be at those disaster recovery centers. It's really important that you remember those disaster recovery centers. A lot of the people who are going to come in to help will be able to direct you to where those are placed, but those are important to be able to locate and visit because they're going to get you a lot of your critical needs. The SBA also has, speaking of critical needs assistance, and that is basically just the $500. Here you go. Use this to buy water, food, clothes, etc., things like that. And again,
So this is available. I'm sorry, Attorney Lawless, this information concerning the SBA is available even if you don't have a business.
Absolutely, yes. This doesn't, even though it's a small business administration, you do not have to be a business owner. You don't have to have anything to do with a business. You can be unemployed and still qualify for SBA assistance. In the instance of a disaster, they essentially just have a special function that allows them to supplement FEMA. So this $500, for instance, these loans have nothing to do with you being a business owner. Oh, there we go. SBA appeals and reconsideration. If you are interested in appealing your decision from the SBA, it has to be done within 6 months of the day of the denial. A lot of the times when people are applying for the SBA, they're not actually interested in the loans. They're just going through the process with FEMA. You do not have to undertake an appeal if you do not want to. SBA appeals are optional if you really actually want the relief. You'll see here on the slide too, I say when FEMA requests or requires an SBA loan application, that application denial for the SBA does not mean you have been denied relief. It means you have been denied an SBA loan and you get to go back to FEMA. SBA needs to directly communicate that information to FEMA though. You can't give them a denial letter. Essentially what FEMA has said is those are too easy to just work up on your computer by yourself. We want the information from the SBA. So make sure that when you get that denial, they ship the information over. FEMA appeals are a huge area of practice in the wake of disasters for legal aid in general. A lot of this just has to do with the fact that the application for FEMA is complicated. They have to be done within 60 days of the decision. Again, FEMA fortunately is very generous with its deadlines. So if you can get something to them within that 60 days of getting that letter that they will send you, get it to them. If it's early on in the process, absolutely reach out to counsel. A lot of the language that they use with these applications is just a matter of knowing exactly what they're talking about. They'll also occasionally request more information. Those requests for information aren't denials. They're just asking, oh, can you supplement what we have just so we can say, prove that you own your home. You want to do that within the 21 days that they give you. Again, in the state of Florida, at least, it depends on where you are not particularly rigid with those. So if you get it to them on the 22nd, 24th day, that doesn't mean that if you get to that point, it doesn't mean that you're done. Absolutely try anyway. They actually are there to help. They have a specific grant they are trying to run down. So don't worry too much about the deadlines, but do try to stick to them as much as you can. If you can't get the information in time, you can ask for extensions as well. You don't have one bite at the apple when it comes to appeals. You can appeal as many times as you need to. They also operate a helpline at FEMA for assistance with those appeals. In addition to the helpline with FEMA, you can contact an advocate. For instance, we do it all the time at legal aid. If you don't qualify for legal aid, the private bar can help with this as well. A lot of the common causes of denials Again, like I talked about at the top of it, you can't prove that you own the property. There's a list of the things that they do actually accept as proof. A deed, obviously. Agreements for deed are new. Uh, Documents that can show that you borrowed money against the house, even if you don't have a deed or an agreement for deed. And again, I said proof of payment of maintenance for taxes without paying rent. That just means if you pay the tax bill, even if you are not on the deed or in public record, but you can show that you have tax bills paid in your name, they will also accept that. They'll also accept affidavits explaining why you don't have that information, because they do understand how that can be difficult in the wake of a disaster. But you will have to, in that 21-day supplemental period, generally provide that information. A couple of big things. Unwilling to relocate. The application is going to ask you if you are unwilling to relocate, or if you are willing to relocate. And you can say, no, I'm not willing to relocate. That does not mean that they're asking you to move from your home and live somewhere else permanently. That means, are you willing to go somewhere else while we fix your roof so you can then come back? They don't explain that. FEMA staff, in fact, is not allowed to explain that to you when you're applying. So just be aware of that specific sort of trick question. If they ask you if you are willing to relocate, generally the answer is going to be yes, because you want to be able to give them a chance to repair your home. They're not asking you to permanently move. Saying no will immediately get you a denial. Another one is the home safe to occupy? A lot of the times what will happen is, for instance, a tree will go through the roof in your back bedroom. You can live in the rest of the house, but you still need that repaired. So you say, yeah, of course it's safe to occupy. I just have a tarp. We close the door. We don't go back there. That is not what they mean. They basically mean the house is in good repair and up to code. According to FEMA, even if you can live in the rest of the house, if there is a tree through the roof in that back bedroom, it is not safe to occupy. Safe to occupy essentially means it is in good condition. Nothing really needs to be fixed. So remember that when you are answering these questions as well. Another big one is missed or inaccurate inspections. You have to be available for the FEMA inspectors when they come by. They hire a lot of these people. They used to give them quotas and bonuses for exceeding those quotas. So they would just do quick drive-bys, check yes or no, and move on. They were not really great inspections. They have stopped that program, fortunately, but a lot of the times you really want to see what came back on those inspection reports, because those can be helpful for appeals. A lot of the times they just put in inaccurate information. One last thing that I wanted to discuss too, in the context of homeownership, moving beyond relief, is mortgage and foreclosure. Nothing explicitly occurs in the law that modifies your need to pay your mortgage on a regular basis. You're going to want to review your individual mortgage documents. Of course, there are what are called force majeure clauses, which means that the specific provisions of this contract generally can be altered because of an act of God. A hurricane certainly qualifies. Most of the disasters qualify, but that does not automatically cease the need for you to make your regular mortgage payments. That also does not mean that your mortgage servicer or lender is going to be unwilling to work with you. You know, they get calls from the news. They are trying to run a business. They are often putting in place, for practical purposes, relief programs so that they can help people. They do actually want to get paid. A good idea is to immediately reach out to your lender as soon as you can, if you have a mortgage, to arrange for relief or see if they have any programs in place for that. A lot of the times they are, in fact, willing to work with you. Just because your home is uninhabitable doesn't mean your mortgage doesn't need to be paid. So just keep that in mind. You really need to worry about it. You really need to keep that in mind, not necessarily worry about it. To contact your lender, stay in contact with your lender. If you do that, a lot of the times you're going to be all right. If you're not, there are other legal alternatives. You're going to want to consult with an attorney if it comes down to your lender not working with you. Sometimes you might need to file bankruptcy. You can go that far. A lot of the times it doesn't become necessary, but keep it in mind, if you are having trouble meeting those mortgage obligations and your mortgage servicer is not willing to work with you, it's generally important to seek counsel.
Right. Thank you so much, Attorney Lawless. We have so much wonderful information to share, and this is not even all of it. We could go on perhaps all day. So thank you for the information. And now we want to move forward to show you the list of resources that are available. So again, when you review this, with friends and family, and please share this information. You have ample access to resources through this list. We now want to go to the third phase of our discussion. Again, our goal is to track the 3 phases: before, during, and after the hurricanes. What do you need to do? And so we've captioned this last section for homeowners as follows: redevelopment after destruction, contract basics and avoiding fraud. And we're honored with yet another outstanding speaker and lawyer, attorney Julie Torrez, who is an associate at the law office of Richard D. Saba in Sarasota, Florida. She is a member of the Florida Bar and primarily practices in the areas of residential and commercial real estate transactions. Ms. Torrez graduated from the Florida State University. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree. She has a master's degree from the University of Florida and a Juris Doctor degree from Thomas Cooley Law School. Welcome, Attorney Torrez. And of course, it's always the case that we have too much left to discuss, but we're going to go through it because this information is too important. Attorney Torrez?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. So I want to start today, we're talking about avoiding fraud, and in particular with hurricanes and rebuilding our lives after a hurricane has hit the construction industry and relying on reputable contractors to put our homes back together. So we've all read the headlines. News organizations that have customer advocates and investigative journalists highlight people and businesses trying to scam homeowners, but these are the only ones that get caught. So what about the rest of them? The most important thing we need to do is to inquire and hire licensed contractors only. So the first one is to ask for a quote. In doing so, businesses, especially government entities and nonprofits, they usually require at least 3 bids or estimates, and homeowners should do the same. It can help you compare not only the costs, but also the services and production of rebuilding your house, and the payment timeline and requirements. The second one is to verify the contractor's license. And now this is really critical. Even if there's a contractor's license printed on the estimate or on the side of the vehicle, double check that the number and the name match. If the person you're working with isn't listed on that website, then you need to call the company and verify that they actually work for the company. There was one story after Hurricane Ian where a contractor, I think it was for tree removal, who was going door to door claiming to be from Texas and soliciting business with a contractor's license. He took deposits, but then he disappeared. And it turns out the contractor's license was valid. The business in Texas was legitimate. And they called the company's owner, and he said that none of his crew had ever been to Florida and were not there to help after the hurricane. So all those homeowners lost thousands of dollars to someone scamming them. The next thing to do would be to verify the company and its reputation. Just like the good old employment days with paper resumes, ask for references. Or, you can always go to the Better Business Bureau's website to see if they have any complaints filed against them. There's also the Division of Corporations website, sunbiz.org, and that's with the state of Florida. You can click on search records in the top banner and search by the company's name, the officer or registered agent, the company's tax identification number, which is called the EIN, or even the company's street address. And you can search as well to see if the person is operating under a fictitious name or if there are any judgment liens against them. This is all valuable information that the state of Florida openly shares with the public. Next, you want to ask for proof of general liability and workers' compensation insurance. So the picture you see on your screen is typically what is provided to show that proof of liability insurance. It should contain the name and address of the company, the name and address of the insurer, and the coverages. It's also very important to ask about workers' compensation coverage. Homeowners don't usually think about this, but they absolutely want to make sure the company they hire has workers' compensation coverage on its employees. these crews are doing work on your property, in your home. And without these coverages, the liability could be on the homeowner if a worker is injured. It's not enough just to get copies of this information. You can also just call the company, the insurance company, to verify that the policy is actually active and current. In connection with that, you want to ask for proof that the contractor is bonded. So the insurance coverage is required if the contractor needs to file a claim against that insurance. Being bonded means that someone else is covered if there is a claim against the bond. So a contractor being bonded tells the homeowner that the contractor is willing to be held accountable and to honor claims that the homeowner can make. And the contractor will stand behind the work of its crew, even if the contractor has to pay more money. So once you get through those initial steps, this is before you've even picked anyone to fix your house up. Now you're to the point where you can hire somebody. Any attorney will tell you, get it in writing. So now you're ready to hire, ask for a written contract. I would even update my own slide to say require a written contract. This actually protects both the homeowner and the contractor. And be sure that all the terms are there. There are no blank lines and everything is filled in, especially when it comes to the price and how the final price is calculated, because sometimes a contractor doesn't know how many of a certain material they need. So they'll tell you a one item price and say it'll be dependent upon how many we need. And as the homeowner, make sure that you understand what the services are that are going to be performed and what materials will be needed. Approximately how long the project is going to take and what the expectations are for payment. If all of this information isn't included in the written contract, don't sign it, and make sure that it gets filled in before you do. Homeowners don't want surprises, and honest contractors won't have a problem being transparent either. The next part would be to read the contract and any financing documents. Yes, read the contract. Read it carefully, read it multiple times, read the entire thing multiple times. Read the financing documents, even the fine print. Remember, homeowners don't want surprises, so don't set yourself up for surprises just because you didn't read the fine print or you only skimmed a paragraph. Be thorough and be sure to fully understand. If you're financing the work, research that company you're financing with. Often it's a third party, it's not the contractor. And nowadays, many people don't have a problem going online and openly posting their opinions about a company, especially if it's negative. So do a little research. All of this is at your fingertips on the internet. So the next thing to do is, oh, I'm sorry, let's go back for 1 second. One thing I want to point out really quickly is, especially during a storm, and this happened to me personally, we often have door-to-door salesmen. People will come to your home and do what's called a home solicitation. Under Florida law, you have a 3-day cooling off, or sometimes called a buyer's remorse period. So if someone comes to your house to sell you some kind of contract with construction on your house, you have 3 business days to cancel that contract in writing. So that's important to know. That's only for the door-to-door salespeople. So keep that in mind. Next part is very critical. Never pay in full upfront. It should be drilled in every homeowner's brain. Requiring payment in full upfront for a project should make all kinds of alarm bells go off. Honest, legitimate, and experienced companies will have a payment plan or payment structure based on when the work is completed. If the homeowner doesn't pay, the contractor has legal tools that we'll talk about in a bit that they can use to try and recover from the homeowner. However, the homeowner also has the right to have the project completed and be reasonably satisfied with the work. So not making that final payment until the work is completed and accepted by the homeowner helps to ensure the job is done and done correctly. Never pay in cash. We talked previously about having the receipts for things in your house prior to the storm or appliances and whatnot. This is the same kind of, it's along the same lines. Homeowners should always have the receipts or paper trails for any payments they make, especially for the home improvements. I understand that many contractors might charge a fee or a percentage if you pay with a credit card, but keep in mind, paying that small fee is going to be nothing, going to be very minuscule compared to having to litigate, having to take them to court, or being sued for non-payment. Also, depending on the improvement or the repair, there could be tax benefits to the homeowner that they can take advantage of. They get a new roof, certain materials might qualify them for some kind of tax break. So you definitely want to have that proof of payment and the work that was done. Next, definitely want to supervise the work. You don't have to hover over them, but they're in your house. This is your biggest asset. Even if they're bonded and insured, there's nothing wrong with being on site or having somebody you trust on site while they're there. You want to ask to see if there is a permit. Not all projects require a permit. A lot of construction projects do on a house. The homeowners can always go online to the website for the city or county where they live, through the permitting office, and search your own property and see if a permit was pulled. You can ask about the inspection process if you want to call up the permitting office and see what else needs to be done to close out permits, and have that conversation, with the contractor. And after all this is said and done, you're still not done. That's not all, folks. The next piece would be to make sure that there are no liens on your property. So even after the work is complete, you've paid the final bill, you think everything's done, you still have to make sure that those permits are closed out properly, and that everyone who worked on the project, meaning all subcontractors, all laborers, all suppliers, that everyone's paid. Here's the kicker. Even if the homeowner has paid the contractor in full for the work that was done, and the contractor doesn't pay the subcontractors and laborers or suppliers, the homeowner's on the hook to make those payments. Those contractors, subcontractors, everyone who worked on the house, they can file what's known as a mechanic's lien. And from there, it can get very ugly legally, even going as far as foreclosure on the house. So, foreclosure on the lien, where the court could make you sell your house. Now, that's drastic, but that is part of the law. So this is why homeowners want to get what's called a release of lien from all of the contractors, subcontractors, anyone that has worked on the property. Now, the big red flags that you want to watch out for with contractors are the unsolicited offers to make repairs, offering huge discounts with leftover supplies from another job, and using high-pressure sales tactics. So no, not all unsolicited door-to-door salespeople are crooked. But these are often, all three of these often work in tandem. People offering huge discounts because they have leftover supplies from another job was something that was on the news in the Tampa Bay area a few years ago, where two gentlemen were going door to door to sell asphalt for homeowners with asphalt driveways. And they took thousands. I want to say it was like $7,000 or $10,000 from someone who had cash in their house. They did a subpar job and they disappeared. They never came back to fix it properly, and the homeowner, of course, was out. A couple things, door to door, and they paid cash. Big problems there. So lastly, you don't want to fall for high pressure sales tactics. Remember those door to door sales solicitations? They legally have a 3 business day cooling off period when the homeowner can send a cancellation of the contract in writing. Yes, that's key, in writing. They have to send that cancellation in writing to the contractor. Finally, if you feel like you've been scammed, please file a complaint. Speak up. First, you can call the Department of Business and Professional Regulations. Additionally, you can file a complaint with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. They actually act as the state's consumer complaint clearinghouse, and they can help guide you with the next steps. And finally, and most importantly, the State Attorney General's office accepts complaints online or by phone. Consumer fraud is one of the top priorities for the State Attorney General's office. And they take every claim, every complaint filed very seriously. If all of this seems too much, if all of these options seem overwhelming, call the Florida Bar and ask to find a local attorney. Go to the Florida Bar website or call the Florida Bar, and they can get you in touch with a local attorney that can help you. Lastly, remember to look for this logo and to do your homework. You want a Florida licensed contractor. Don't give your hard-earned money to anyone making improvements on your home without doing your homework first, because you're the best defense against fraud. and protecting your biggest assets. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Attorney Torrez. There's so much information again, and I know as lawyers, we're always reluctant to go on too long, but we just try and introduce and identify those essential things that people need to know. That was an outstanding presentation, as well as all the presentations that we received. Now, of course, we have an opportunity here to provide you with a chance to ask some questions. We have a time challenge in some regards because it's almost time to begin our next session. But at the same time, we are committed to this educational outreach event. And so I want to take this opportunity to also introduce my co-moderator, the student president of the Real Property Probate and Trust Law section. This is a student organization at the law school that is committed and in fact is co-hosting this event. Let me introduce Mr. Jacob Goss, one of our outstanding students. And I think we have a couple of questions. We're going to try and address those questions fairly quickly, and then we'll take a break and come back and start the second session for tenants. Mr. Goss, we have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at this event. We had a couple of questions presented from the survey earlier. So those were directed towards Attorney Fletcher and Attorney Lawless. We were looking at, what if I am underinsured and the insurance company will not produce an adjuster's report, but just sends out another and changes the name and information? Is there something I can do to correct this or address the multiple inspection?
Well, I think the important thing to do in a situation like that is to really get a professional to help you out. So we spoke a lot about public adjusters and loss assessors before. That's going to be really, really important to you, because what's going to happen is, in a lot of these insurance companies, they have to abide by certain standards when it comes to adjusting of your claim, right? So if they send somebody out to do an inspection, they could send somebody else out to do another reinspection. They have to make a coverage determination within, like we said before, in terms of the 90 days. Now it's actually going to be 60 days in terms of the adjustment period. So there's a lot of little triggers that come into play in terms of what they actually do. So in a situation like that, I would definitely encourage you to get a professional to help you to navigate that. Like I said, a property attorney or a public adjuster would be really, really important in a situation like that, because, last thing you want to do is, drop the ball on your end when it comes to the adjustment period. Hope that answers the question appropriately.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, I suppose that was directed to me in some part. I have really anything to add. Generally, I find that written communication is the best way to handle that. But as Attorney Fletcher said, you do not want to do that inaccurately, because you are making a record. So contacting a professional really is just your best bet in a situation like that. There's not really a good self-help option for it.
Very good. Mr.
Thank you.
Goss, maybe we have time for one more question and then we will conclude this segment.
Yes, we have a question for Mr. Fletcher. It was from Michelle, and she's inquiring about how often you should get a home inspection or do the 4-point inspection and wind and mitigation report.
Sure. I mean, typically the 4-point inspection is keyed into the initial getting of the actual policy in and of itself. So that's usually in the beginning. But if you do make additions to your home, so say, for example, you add impact windows or you add shutters, it might actually be in your best interest to get another inspection from the insurance company, because you could also open up a whole array of discounts for you too as well. Because if you can actually show the insurance company that you're taking steps to make their risk lower, they may very well pass those savings on to you. So yeah, if you're making any additions to your property that are going to ultimately make it stronger, definitely let the insurance company know, because I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you. And we actually only had one more question, if we could address it as well.
One more question.
Okay,
We'll
yes.
run a little
last-
over, but this is
yes.
all designed to give you information. So I think that's the
Yes.
most important emphasis. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So we have a question from Eric. It is, what is the legal age requirement for when an insurance company can require you to replace your roof, regardless of damage coverage?
That that is a very interesting question. I don't know if it's hard fast, but the legislature did make a few changes, and one of them is that the insurance company can't just automatically deny you when it comes to the age of your roof, especially if you have a claim. If your roof is less than 15 years old, they can't just do an automatic denial. And if your roof is more than 15 years old, then you're at least entitled to have an inspection of that roof in and of itself. So I know it's not the most direct answer because a lot of times insurance carriers are going to do what they're going to ultimately do based on their own business models. So some of them may take a look at your roof and say, okay, yeah, we're just not going to extend coverage for you for the next period. And they may very well do that. And people have been dropped actually not even having any claims whatsoever and the roof being in good shape, but the insurance company makes a calculation. So I hope that answers the question.
Well,
Thank
very
you.
good. Well, we will have to end it there. And let me just say again, on behalf of the Western Michigan University Cooley Law School, the 10 Commandments of Real Estate, and our student organization, known as the Reptiles, or the Real Property Probate and Trust Law Group, which is a student organization associated with the State Bar of Florida, let me thank each and every one of our speakers for taking the time to put this information together. This particular segment will be uploaded as a homeowner segment. And finally, let me thank those of you that have been listening and those of you that will listen. Again, we consider this to be our responsibility as lawyers. The meteorologists tell us bad news. The economics professors tell us the statistical data about the significance of hurricanes. Our job and what we've attempted to do here is to educate you about what you need to know before, during, and after a hurricane. So thank you so much for joining us. And we are going to pause now and we will resume and come back in approximately 5 minutes to begin the session for homeowners. Thank you so much again for joining us. And it looks like, speakers, you've done such an outstanding job, we might have to do another session. But for now, thank you so much, and I will see everyone back so that we can begin the tenants section momentarily. Thank you.